Battle rages on the ground between Israel and Hamas. You heard Allison and I talking about this just a moment ago. Both sides are also engaged in a media war, a propaganda war. And we're joined now by Alan Dershowitz. He's the author of The Trials of Zion. And there's Jenny Jones. She is the author of All Roads Lead to Jerusalem. And Emily Shire, reporter at The Daily Beast. Good evening to all of you. Emily, you first. You know, you wrote an article for the Daily Beast calling social media a parallel battleground in the Middle East, excuse me. What did you mean by that specifically?
What I mean by that is while your actual rockets are being lobbed in Israel, we have to understand that many people over the world feel deeply invested and feel an emotional connection. So instead they weigh in all across the globe, and they're lobbing attacks at each other, often really vitriolic, extremist attacks, unfortunately with little information backing it up.
Yeah. Do you think that social media promotes extremism, or it just reflects it?
I think it's both. I mentioned in my article that a social media manager for the African National Congress posted a very pro-Hitler, pro-Holocaust message. And there are certainly studies that show that there are rises in anti-Semitism, particularly this year. But the thing with social media is that it lets you retweet and share these really vitriolic messages so easily without any thought behind it. So I think there's a basis at a certain point, but then it spreads so fast and we just become desensitized to it. Or when we're using Twitter, the truth of the matter is there's a lot of nuance to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in 140 characters, and certainly not a hashtag, you cannot fit that in there.
There's a lot of room for error in there, and not much room, if any, for context. You know, Alan, Michael Oren, who is a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. and a CNN Middle East analyst, wrote a very controversial op-ed about the battle of hearts and minds in the Middle East, and he says the international media is unwittingly, quote, complicit in Hamas's media strategy because it shows civilian casualties, and this is another quote, obsessively. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think context has to be provided. There have been tragically many civilian casualties, but the reason is because Hamas deliberately uses Palestinian civilians as human shields. Some people deny that. Let me read you from one of the leaders of Hamas, who have been saying this for years, quote, "We have formed human shields of the women, the children, the elderly, the mujahideen, in order to challenge the Zionist bombing machine. It is as if they were saying to the Zionist enemy, we desire death like you desire life." Now, I don't think that Palestinian mothers want to see their children die. I do think that Hamas leaders are deliberately putting their children and their women in harm's way. And let's also remember that there was no blockade of Gaza between 2005 and 2007. Gaza could have become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. The blockade began only after thousands of rockets were sent. So
Alan, here's the thing with that. When we go on to talk about these issues, it becomes really tough to do it in the time that we have, because then you have to start debating the whole crisis and how it began. And I'm not sure if this medium is the right place for it. When we call it news, it's about news. It's about what's happening. I agree, context is everything. Hang on, let me finish. I agree, context is everything. But by saying that women by saying that Palestinian women, Alan, will you let me talk, please? By saying that Palestinian families are more apt to putting their children in harm's way is disrespectful and insulting to probably everyone in our audience. Jenny, do you agree or disagree?
The point is that Hamas leaders are the ones who do it, not the Palestinian families. They don't want their children in harm's way. There have been many
You're saying that, Alan, you're saying...
Let me finish now, please. You made your point. Let me finish.
No, hang on. Let me finish. Hold on. Hang on. Hang on, Alan. I'm going to let you finish. Jenny, I'll let you finish. I just don't want all of us talking at the same time.
That's a fact. And you can't deny it.
Hang on. This is weird because we're all in Skype. So, Jenny, hang on. Alan, I'm going to let you start over with your point. If you guys will just listen to me, I will let everybody make their point. But if I tell you that I need to get in and jump in, please let me do it. So, okay. Alan, go ahead, start over, and finish your point.
Ban Ki-moon today acknowledged that Hamas uses mosques, uses hospitals, and uses schools to send rockets. It's not that the Palestinian mothers want to see their children die. Of course not. It's that Hamas leaders hide underground in bunkers. They don't build bunkers for their civilians. They deliberately expose their civilians to death so that they can parade them in front of cameras. That's the reality. That's their strategy, and it's working with the media. And the people have to understand that that's the Hamas strategy, and it's continuing to work, and it's continuing to cause civilian casualties.
Okay, Alan, thank you for saying that. The way you said it in the beginning, it sounded like women and Palestinian women were putting their own children in harm's way.
No, I didn't say that. You misinterpreted it.
Okay,
please play back the tape. I never said that. I never would say it. You said that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not here to argue with you, Alan. I'm just here to conduct the interview.
Just make sure you state my views correctly.
Okay, you're here. You can do that. All right?
Sure.
Go ahead. Jenny, go ahead.
Let me continue my point then. In 2005, Gaza was freed, and there were no blockades. It was only after thousands of rockets were sent that the blockade began. So the blockade is not the cause of the rockets. It's the result of the rockets.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I mean, that you would not be able to go off onto this tangent.
Say again, Jenny.
I was under the impression that you had already informed him that he would not be able to go off into this tangent.
Yeah, well, that's not, he's here, he's free to speak, and again, I'm here, it's not a tangent, that's his views, but I think there's a bit of miscommunication here.
Those were your words, actually.
There's a bit of miscommunication here because we're on Skype, and it's hard for you to hear me, and it's hard for Alan to hear me, and so there's a lot of crosstalk. So anyway, Jenny, now go ahead.
He may not be saying that mothers are putting their babies in harm's way, but by saying Hamas is doing such a thing, he is saying fathers are. He is saying an entire people are embracing this inhuman strategy, which no civilization would embrace. It is part of a long-standing dehumanization of the Palestinian people, a way to make them appear as an other, a people that cannot be understood by good Western people. I believe Mr. Oren, in his disgusting article, went on to say that journalists, although they're doing their best, are falling prey to a sophisticated PR campaign in which people are parading their children, their dead bodies, their dead children, heads blown off, bellies eviscerated, in order to earn PR points. This is the most disgusting thing I have read in years, and I have been reading on the subject for many years. Again, I've written a book about the region, but
you ought to be blaming the right people. You ought to be blaming Ban Ki-moon, who has made that statement. You ought to be blaming Fatih Hamad of Hamas, who said, we have formed human chains of the shields of the women, the children, the elderly, and the mujahideen. This is one of the leaders.
There is an issue with the audio because of Skype, and so everybody's talking at the same time and not hearing each other's points. So if they have stopped speaking, I want to go back. I want to let Alan finish his point quickly, and then we will move on. Go ahead, Alan.
My point is that it's not that Michael Oren and I are saying this. It's that the leaders of Hamas are saying it. And I quoted one of the leaders of Hamas, talked about how we have formed human shields of the women, the children, the elderly, and they acknowledge that. And Ban Ki-moon today condemned Hamas for firing rockets from schools, from hospitals. It's a reality. You can see photographs of it. You can see videos of rockets coming from schools. It's part of their policy to create human shields in order to induce Israel to kill as many Palestinian civilians as possible. That is not racism. That's the reality. And if there is any racism, it comes from the people who are implementing this policy. By the way, it's not only true of Hamas. It's true in many of the areas where radical folks are using suicide bombers. Suicide bombers, obviously, are designed to kill the bomber. And so we have to face the reality that the reason there are so many civilian casualties are because Hamas uses this strategy of human shields. And as I said before, 700 Syrians were killed in the last 2 days, and the media doesn't even cover.
I've got to get to a break. I'm really sorry about that. I'm sorry about the Skype issues and about the communication issues, but when you're dealing with that and everybody's missing each other at this point and talking over it, I want to invite everyone back when we don't have those technical issues, because it's a conversation that we really need to have.
And it's always a heated conversation.
It's always a heated conversation.
And you are a brave man, Don Lemon, because you take it on every night.
Well, you know.
You saw me sitting here quietly watching.
It's going to happen. That's why,
yes,
that's why
it's
I'm
worth
here.
it. It's worth having that conversation, and everybody has to get their message out, but it's impossible to have it calmly.
Yeah. Up next, New York City's police commissioner orders a top-to-bottom review